Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Green. I'm the president of the International Republican Institute, and I am delighted to join our sister organization, NDI, with the support of our mothership, the National Endowment for Democracy, USAID, Canada's Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. As we would say when I was an ambassador, all protocols observed, so I don't have to list everyone, but a wonderful, distinguished group here today, and we want to welcome our wonderful, distinguished guests. We look forward to hearing from you and learning from you as we all strive to support democracy in your great country. IRI has been working in Kiev for more than 20 years, and we've had the honor of working with many of you during that time. Thanks to the support of the Canadian government, we now have an office in eastern Ukraine as well, which will help us expand services to key parts of the country. This new office will be especially useful as we help the government realize the promise of the new Constitution in reforming governance, in devolving power from the capitals to cities and oblasts throughout the country. To our Ukrainian guests, please know that IRI stands with you, that all of us stand with you as you pursue your democratic path to Europe, as you take on the daunting challenges of corruption, and as you push back against anti-democratic threats on your eastern and southern borders. You are always here as friends, and please consider this your home here in Washington, D.C. Again, thank you for joining us. Thanks to all of you for joining us here today, and welcome to IRI.
Sorry. Not at all. I'm Laura Jewett from the National Democratic Institute, and I'm sorry for jumping in. Thank you to Mark Green and Steve Nix and the rest of the IRI team for hosting this event and for hosting the delegation this week. I know it will be rewarding for all involved. Thank you to Undersecretary Dobryansky, who has been a tireless champion of Ukraine throughout her career. And of course, a very warm welcome to our visitors and friends. NDI is very proud to have partnered with the Equal Opportunities Caucus literally since its formation in December 2011. And these women represent the caucus. We worked closely with it ever since and have just signed an MOU on future cooperation through 2015, and we're pleased about that. Elena Kondratyuk probably remembers the dinner in Kiev at the home of NDI Director Christina Wilfor at the time. Congresswoman Titus shared U.S. experiences on congressional caucuses, and at that dinner, we were told there was cautious optimism about forming a gender caucus in Ukraine. The caucus has come a long way since those tentative days. It formed as the first cross-party group in the highly politicized atmosphere of 2011 and 2012. And it was the first caucus to reform after the 2012 parliamentary elections, which was a testament to how effective it had been in raising the prominence of gender issues in previous years. The efforts of the caucus to change the way women in politics are viewed has sparked a sea change in attitudes in Ukraine, and this happened even before the Revolution of Dignity. When former parliamentary speaker Volodymyr Litvin said women were created from Adam's rib and thus secondary creatures, the caucus, which included members of Litvin's ruling party of regions, condemned him. This was not an easy thing to do, but it was the right thing. In March 2010, former Prime Minister Mykola Azarov said publicly that the reason his government did not contain any women is that reforms do not fall within a woman's competence. It's probably more accurate to say that reforms did not fall within Azarov's competence, but that's another story. The point is that the caucus's high-profile work on behalf of gender issues began to make it politically toxic for Ukrainian politicians to continue making such remarks. and this was even before Euromaidan. You'll hear a lot today, I hope, about our guests' work on behalf of reform and of gender equity. I want to single out two things. The first is gender quotas in electoral laws. The caucus has been a tireless advocate for them, including in an electoral law now before the Rada. And in 2014 elections, there was a small improvement overall in the numbers of women elected to parliament, but there was a huge leap forward in the numbers of women standing on party lists, largely as the result of the introduction of a voluntary gender quota in 2013 and decisions made by some parties to place more women in winnable positions, and the caucus had a lot to do with this. Caucus members also stand out for their work to protect Ukrainian sovereignty and address the effects of the war, especially by helping with the resettlement of women IDPs. As they will likely tell you, they're frequent visitors to the front and have witnessed the Russian presence there firsthand. Caucus members have demonstrated leadership and vision regarding citizen outreach. While this is always important for elected officials, it has taken on new urgency now since Euromaidan, and the caucus is planning to organize meetings of its leadership and members with citizens, community leaders, and representatives of local CSOs in the regions close to the conflict areas of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. They're interested in establishing stronger connections with citizens in eastern Ukraine, and especially in the oblasts affected by the conflict, and this is a very commendable goal. We, again, wish you a wonderful week here in Washington, and thanks to IRI.
Want to make sure. I have to say, forgive me for jumping in. I'm very truly excited. First, just a congratulations to IRI, NDI, and the family for holding this, especially because these women are so accomplished, so extraordinary, so talented, and they really have quite a bit to impart about the situation in Ukraine. What also impresses in the spirit of the Ned family, that they also are unified, have come together, want to see Ukraine succeed, and they are joining forces. They represent parties, but they're joining forces to make sure that Ukraine goes forward. So let me begin. Each is going to discuss a particular. Oh, my mic is not on. My voice. The mics are all on. I hope all of you can hear me now, and my apologies. All right. Let me say that there are 4 topics. Each of them will address individually. First, we will be hearing about the topic of the situation on the ground in East Ukraine and also about Crimea. Secondly, we will talk about the scale and the scope of economic reforms and where they are. Thirdly, we will talk about the question of women's empowerment. And then we're going to hear about where the case of Savchenko is and the very difficult ongoing disinformation campaign, the war of information. And by the way, as each member of parliament speaks, they might weave in additional topics and comment. For example, Crimea is one that several have said they want to add a few words on. But let me begin with the first introduction of the first speaker, who's at the end there, Maria Ionova, who is not only member of parliament, but she is the deputy chairperson of the Committee on European Integration, and she is co-chair of the Equal Opportunities Interfaction Union. Let me just say a couple of words. She has worked extensively on behalf of the issue of children, women's health, children's rights, and rights of internally displaced women and children. Significantly, I want to also mention you have worked on legislation to promote women's rights, preventing and combating domestic violence. She also joined forces with another colleague from the parliament and initiated 2 photo exhibitions of Ukrainian photographers, Women, War and Peace, and Donbass, War and Peace, which, by the way, is on exhibit in the Capitol, and you are seeing photos behind me here. I want to make one more comment about Maria. Interestingly enough, during the time of the Maidan demonstrations, she joined forces with the former foreign minister, Boris Tadasuk. And during these demonstrations, the two of them conducted daily briefings on the situation right there in Independence Square. Very significant. She's going to address the situation on the ground in eastern Ukraine and in Crimea today. Maria.
Gustav would, yeah, can I take it? Um, sorry. Of course, this photos which you will see, it's not very testy, but sorry for that. And I will also tell some stories which will not be very diplomatic here in such atmosphere, but sorry, that's the truth which we would like to deliver for you. And I would like, first of all, of course, to thank IRI for our visit, and to thank, of course, for this support for freedom and democracy in Ukraine starting from 2003. And I would like to say that it's not the first revolution. It's already the second revolution, and we are experienced. So we have experience in the revolution, and we believers do not want another revolutions. We would like to live peacefully in democratic society and with the good neighbors, and where the rule is law, or the rule of law is working. Of course, I would like to say thanks to also your support and Democrats and Republicans for all the bills which supports Ukraine, for all the statements which supports Ukraine. Because believe us, for our people, it's really very important not to be alone in such difficult situation. I would like to say that we are here really, it's a big unity. We are here different parties, but the goal what we have is the only one. It's Ukraine, and it's everything about Ukraine, and it's everything about freedom and democracy and human rights. Also would like to say that we are really very often, we are visiting ATO, anti-terroristic zone, and we see by our own eyes what is going on there and what damages, how suffering people are, and it's really, we would like this to be over. And that is why I would like just a few words. When you see these photos, it's each photo, it's story of the family, it's story of the team. This is the story of Ukraine. And I would like to say that you will see a boy who is 5 years old. He was shot by terrorists and he stopped talking. And then Ukrainian soldiers were living in their flat because they were trying to defend their district, civilian district. And Ukrainian soldiers, they were singing every evening with him. And after 1 week, he started not to speak, he started to sing. And his hair was absolutely gray after he was shot. So that was a recovering. So Ukrainian soldiers had made a treatment for him when they were singing and when they spent time together and so on. When you see the rockets from the field, and especially in the floods, these big rockets, it's absolutely, and you know this evidence, it's produced in Russia. And such present, unfortunately, we have on our territory, on sovereign territory of Ukraine. And also you will see a face of 3 years old girl with the red points. It's a girl who was sitting during 3 weeks in the shellings, and because of the shellings, and she was bited by the rats. And here also a lot of photos, the role of women. You will see women who are gathering everything for soldiers. You will see elder woman who is knitting socks for the soldiers. Here is volunteers girl who are learning English, wounded soldiers. so the role of women now in this conflict is so big because, first of all, women are giving their brothers, sons, and husbands to the war, and they absolutely understand that that they are not able to do opposite. It's the only one way to defend the country. I would like to say that from 6 military hospitals, 4 women, the heads of the military hospitals, 4 are women. It means that a big role of women, and you can see the wedding in the hospitals. And this soldier is a disabled. And anyway, women gets married with their beloved man because she understands what the price he has paid for the future of Ukraine. And so this is a woman who has lost her husband, and they have 2 children, and she went as a volunteer also to the front, and that is why the president has nominated her a prize. What I would like to say, sorry, I can talk a lot. I mean, I can comment each of the photo, but because this photo, we are trying, to deliver the truth. We have had this exhibition in Strasbourg, in London, in Brussels. We are going now. It's a great honor for us to have it in the Congress. We are going to have it in other European capitals. Just when people see this by own eyes, they can then after that they can say that it's a civil war, because they see that the arms is absolutely everything produced and delivered from Russia Federation. And it's not an internal conflict. It's absolutely inspired conflict from Russia Federation. And also it shows the high spirit of our people who are ready to fight till the end. And that is why we have such words in our hymn when we will that our soul and we will give our soul and body for the freedom of Ukraine. And that's absolutely true. And we can see it now after the 9 months, and especially we can say that our revolution of dignity is not over. I would like to say that the consequences are awful. We have more than 6,000 people killed. We have around 16,000 complicated injured. 70 children were killed, and around 180 people also complicated, injured, wounded. And we are also, it's a part of our humanitarian program. We are trying to send these injured children to European countries where they can have more professional and high-level treatment. And I would like to say that here we wanted to show you some photo about Lugansk infant orphan's house, and the director of this house, she saved 68 children. Russia, FSB people, they wanted to kidnapping, to take them to Russia Federation, and she was risking by her life. She had a gun near her head, and during the night she evacuated these children to Ukrainian territory. So now they're in Severodonetsk, in Ukrainian territory, and we are also, the president will give her a prize on the Mother's Day, which we will have in May. So it's also the role of women, how brave women we have. I would like to say that it's a big concern for us, occupied territory, because we understand that 2.5 million people are hostages of occupant and its Russian Federation. And we know this, and we have the signals, of course, of human rights, of sexual violations, of children's rights. And that is why we also address to international community, to UN, to OSCE, to International Red Cross to help us to order the facts and also to deliver the medicine, the food, and because it's really big need on that territory. Also, I would like to say that after Minsk Agreement number 2, unfortunately, the ceasefire was not stopped. We have more than 2,800 shellings already. 95 people were killed, including civilians, and more than 500 were wounded. Of course, it's the humanitarian situation on such regions as Donetsk and Lugansk, and also Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, is really very tough, because this is the first time after the Second World War we have such numbers of IDP people. It's already 1,300,000 IDP people, but it's officially registered. And the numbers who are not registered, who just went to their relatives, it's absolutely almost the same. The same. And 66% of this IDP people, it's girls and women, and other it's retired old people. That is why when we asking and we're for support, we are usually ask for, of course, humanitarian assistance, and this is, if I can say, it's medical equipment, because in this conflict zone we didn't have specialized hospitals, and that is why we need their even used equipment, as now they have a big pressure and a lot of wounded civilians, and not only military but also civilian people. What Ukraine needs, of course, arms, but arms not to attack, arms to defend, because it's not only about Ukraine, all this situation. It's about the whole world, because it's all about rule of law, it's all about human rights, it's all about democracy. And that is why we would like to address that we need the assistance of the whole world to defend their and our values. We also, thanks that at the very beginning we immediately had a financial support, and we are asking to continue this financial and technical support. And of course, we need more pressure, and we need more support on the sanctions, because Putin, he understands only the language of force, unfortunately. Strong language, not diplomatic language. And that is why we need this, because if we had a good modern arms, I don't think that he attacked us because he understands that we can answer. So he attacked us when we were really very weak, but he didn't estimate the spirit of Ukrainians. And that's our biggest arms, is the spirit of the people. And I would like to say that this photo is children from Mariupol, and they say that, Uncle Vova, do not defend us, we would like to leave. And I can say that this is the slogan of all even Russian speakers people, because believe us, now in the army or in the volunteer battalions, the majority of the people are Russian speakers. And it's, it's absolutely a stereotype when we hear that the Russian language has to be defended. I would like also to say that it's a big concern for us, Crimea. And my colleague will add more information, but I would like to say that 300,000 people now in a big danger. We have only 20,000 IDPs from Crimea in Ukrainian territory, but it's because they had such silent rule after the first deportation not to leave their land. And that is why they're trying to fight for sovereign Ukraine, and now we have a lot of violations on human rights, missing persons in the prison, people, and and because the legislative law, it's de facto Russian legislation is working there in Crimea, not Ukrainian, and even that is why we need also help there. And I would like to say that please do pay attention to Crimea, because they don't have a lot of time. They will be destroying very quick, because I would like to say that, for example, Mr. Chubarov, who is the head of Majlis, he was his mother was departed when she was 6 years old, and now he is not able to get to his land and to see even his mom. And the same is with Mr. Jamilov. His son in the prison, he is also one of the hostages of Putin. But he told that I will never ask Putin to release my son, because my people and the fighting for my people is much more for me, even so he can even sacrifice by his son except on his people. I would like to say also that to thank the reaction of Americans after the film of Putin, where he absolutely confirmed that that was him who has planned to occupy Crimea with the Russian troops and so on. So, and we have here the statement only from Americans, but not from the other part of the world. That is why we're also thankful for you. I would like to say, to finalize my speech, that we are Ukrainian representatives, women here. We are looking and we are searching a peace. And that is why this exhibition and our speeches would like to say that we are trying to do everything to have peace on our land. And that is why we need your support, we need your solidarity, and please keep pressure, continue to keep pressure on aggressor, because we think that the truth is absolutely obvious, and for you also. And one more time, thank you for your support.
Thank you very much, Maria. We're now going to hear from Alona Babak, who is the Deputy Chairperson on the Committee on Construction, Urban Development, Housing, Municipal Utilities, and Regional Policy. She has a very interesting background. She's published, written and published 30 scientific papers focused on the question of reform of housing and communal services, the economy, and also the regulation of natural monopolies. And by the way, those particular publications are have been printed by the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Also, I have to mention, she got her MBA from Old Dominion University. She was a Muskie Fellow, so she certainly knows the United States. Welcome to you, Alona.
Добрий день. Good afternoon. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and pleasure to be here today and to bring to your attention the situation that is in Ukraine. The war not only killing our people, and you heard about the damages to each family that lost a husband or a son or a daughter or a child in this war. The war is damaging our economy. And one of the biggest challenges that we have now is the affordability of living for Ukrainians. Why? Because we are in the center of Europe and there is market economy around us. And we are import dependent on many things. So you can imagine with the prices for living that are in Europe and we have to pay for it, we are very experiencing huge problems with the economic development in our country because of the investment climate that is really suffering from the war that we have. And just for your understanding, when I talk about affordability of living and the challenge that we have to face, I'll give you an example of what is the average salary in Ukraine now in dollars. It's $138 per month. the minimum wage is $53. And basically all our social protection, social programs are basically bringing up the level of living of people to these at least minimum salary, which is $53 per month. So you can understand what is the challenge for us politicians to support government in market reforms now. So what do we do? The first issue that is everybody's attention is, of course, what do we do in terms of fight with corruption that has been severe in Ukraine for the previous years? What do we do in terms of protecting businesses and people through the fair juridical system? What we have done so far, we have created, with the decree of the President of Ukraine, the Constitutional Expert Group that is working on the amendments to the Constitution to allow a new juridical system to be in place, allowing the election of judges through the professional community, involving more transparency into this system of nominating judges. Also, through the amendments to the Constitution, we are planning to introduce new approaches to the decentralization of power to local self-governments. And in order to create sustainable communities, we have recently approved the law on voluntary aggregation of communities. Just for your understanding, what we mean is that we have about 40% of local self-governments of the village and small town levels that have less than 1,000 residents. This makes them absolutely unsustainable in terms of financial position. So we are trying to do everything in order to support the development of these strong communities from the base level of governments. And bring the services to people at the level of these communities. We have also, last week, we approved the first reading of the law on state service and the draft law on the first reading of the law on the service in local self-governments. What is in those laws to fight corruption? Again, the new principles of nominating people, of selecting the civil servants for their positions through the open competition processes. We are also introducing the notion of dividing political and administrative functions within the government in order to promote professionalism and political integrity to the work of public servants, basically. In terms of, we also now finalizing the work on the new laws about courts. It has been a political compromise that had to take place, but we are doing it. And the fact that we are here representing different factions is also showing that we are finding common understanding within Parliament in order to introduce reforms as well. So these are the preconditions for the reforms: fighting corruption, introducing legal system. But what do we do in terms of economic structural reforms? The biggest issue in terms of structural reforms that we need to face is the energy reform in Ukraine. Why? Because last year, if you look at the numbers of the state budget of Ukraine for the year 2014, you will see that 25% of the budgetary expenditures went to the subsidies of Naftogaz. The Naftogaz is the state enterprise that is one big monopoly in Ukraine, supplying gas to the consumers. We understood that we cannot afford to subsidize at this level Naftogaz anymore. So we had to make a decision of increasing prices for gas to the end consumers, and they will start being imposed to customers on the 1st of May. The prices for gas for the residents increased more than 3 times in the heating season and more than 7 times during the heating season. It's beginning of April until October. 7 times increase of price of gas. And with those salaries that you heard, it's too much. It's huge pressure on our people. So for us, the critical reforms that need to take place have to be aimed at energy efficiency, at substitution of development of alternative sources of fuel. And for that, what we need is, and what we're working on now, are the reforms of introducing new state regulatory commission that will be basically regulating monopolistic markets of gas, of electric energy, of water, of district heating. And these all, we are getting, with that, we get a support actually of American people through the programs of USAID, and we are very thankful to that. We also voted for the law in the second reading that introduces market competition to the gas market. We just approved such law. We have also voted for the new laws that will allow energy efficiency in public buildings through the ESCO mechanisms. That has been absolutely new idea and concept that is introduced to Ukrainian energy efficiency sector, and bringing together the private and public interest in one place. We are also working on the law on energy efficiency in the buildings, because in Ukraine, 34% of energy is consumed in housing. It's the third largest energy consuming sector in Ukraine after metallurgical energy and chemical industry, metallurgical industry and chemical industry. So it is critical for us to do everything in order to decrease consumption to the, because we cannot influence prices, which are market prices, and we are going to it, but we need to reduce our consumption and to switch from our dependency of imported gas, primarily from Russia, to our local sources of energy, which is biomass, which is solar, which is wind, which is solid waste. So for us, all of these things are quite important, and we are focusing on that. Also, there will be debates on the reforms in the agricultural sector. Ukraine is a big country of land, and we are proud of our farmers and our businesses in this particular sector. But there will be a debate, a political debate, whether we will go to a market of land, because we believe that it's not yet the time to sell land and have it traded, because the prices are too low, and we don't want to use that up. We don't want to allow that to happen now, but we are going to it, and we are again having a support of the American people through USAID of this particular sector. There is one more area that I want to focus about economic reform is the tax reform. Why it is so important for us to introduce this reform? Because a lot of people are getting their salaries in the envelopes, as we say. And we see that and this is happening because of huge labor-related taxes. More than 40% of taxes are paid by the employers, and about 18% are taxes, it's an income tax. So overall, we have the pressure of taxes on the salaries up to 60%, which is too much. And with this low salary base, it's still not solving our problems and needs and social welfare, like medical care, education, social protection, pension reforms. So these are the areas that we are trying to focus now. And for that, we have created a group, a working group within the parliament, which will prepare a plan of legal reforms, of legal support of reforms that are urgently needed for Ukraine. So you see that we are working very, very intensively, and the work is going on in the committees every day, and of course during the plenary sessions when we vote. Recently, just to have a little of different topic, but I was recently in Vienna talking about energy efficiency with our colleagues from parliaments in Europe, and there were representatives from Brussels, and they said, from Belgium, and they told me, you are talking that you will have one law, another law in the government to vote. You know, we are preparing a law and voting like for 3 years now. Like it takes us 3 years to prepare a law. And I said, yes, we live in a different environment and different time because everybody is expecting that from us. And we are very thankful for your support, your taxpayers' support of Ukraine. And we really rely on your friendship, and cooperation in future. And thank you very much.
Thank you. By the way, with those two presentations, you could see why I was very excited. I mean, just really how thorough each and every one of these members are. Now we're going to the topic of women's empowerment and also some comments about Crimea. We have Lilia Hrinevich, who is the chairperson of the Committee on Science and Education. And she has done remarkable things in this area. She works on issues of education and science. She is a leading expert on the working group on reforming the education and science system of Ukraine. And you were instrumental in drafting legislation that would give autonomy to Ukraine's university system. And it really is very significant when you read that legislation and what it documents and proposes for change. Let me also add, she was very active on the Maidan as well. And as you can imagine, because of her passion and expertise in education, she initiated the Open University of Maidan. So the students who were demonstrating were able to have courses there, actually on the Maidan. Didn't waste a moment in terms of ensuring that they were continue to be educated. So welcome to you. And here, oh, you got the mic.
Thank you very much for this introduction.
To make sure it's on.
Thank you very much for this introduction, but Open University in Maidan we created with different non-governmental organization. It was a very interesting time to be together and to do remarkable things. Dear ladies and gentlemen, firstly, we are very grateful to IRI for your invitation and supporting our visit. Unfortunately, I am not so fluent in English as my friends are, but I will try with all my respect to do this presentation in English and to give you a picture about the situation of women in Ukraine now. Despite the fact that the majority in Ukrainian parliaments includes 5 different parties, we are united in struggling for the interests of the people of Ukraine, for defense, its territory integrity, and in the creation of successful country. And you have now here 4 co-heads of our caucus in parliament. So, in the early days of the newly elected parliament, we formed the Equal Opportunities Interfaction Union, and the main task of this caucus are to promote gender equality and strengthen women leadership. More than 63% of Ukrainian voters are women. Ukraine also demonstrates high rates of education of women, but very low levels of political participation. The higher you go in governance, the lower the number of women. In terms of women's representation in the parliament, Ukraine ranks only 180 out of 142 countries. 51 women were elected to the Verkhovna Rada after a revolution of dignity, which changed our country. And that was just 12% of MPs. It's a historical maximum in our independent history of Ukraine. So, we have a lot of work to do with this, especially in such time. Now Ukraine has significant time of challenges and opportunities. And women especially are visible and active. In Maidan Revolution, women stood on the front lines of the protests in the large numbers and from all age groups. They were standing for their dignity and equal rights for all people. Then former President Yanukovych escaped, but Russian aggression has started. And women are active and visible now as well in east of Ukraine. A symbol of Ukraine's fight for freedom and independence is woman, Nadia Savchenko. Women are doing heroic works now. They are even soldiers. They suffer from the fear of losing their loved ones. Women do a lot of voluntary work. They raise money and bring food and equipment to soldiers on the front, take care of injured soldiers. And we have a lot of vulnerable group of women. For example, a greater number of women are in difficult situation as IDPs. So, as you know, we have about 1,300,000 IDPs already. 67% of them are women. And these women often face double discrimination when they are looking for new jobs because they came from a different background and because existing gender inequalities. This make for them their life very difficult, and at the same time they have to take care of children and family members. So in current situation, I think we have even more reason to bring women into the politics. We need appropriate representation for women which are impacted by war, among them IDPs, among them widows of soldiers, women from military families, and especially women in politics are more sensitive to the needs of all at-risk groups. So the issue is how to bring brilliant women like these into decision-making position. Even Ukrainian society now is ready for that. So, for example, almost half of Ukrainians agree that there are not enough women in elected office. We need to develop new instruments to increase these numbers on all levels decision-making. Quotas are being discussed in the context of general reform agenda for Ukraine, especially in the electoral legislation. But we have already obligation for the parties that 30% of candidates on the party list must be women. But unfortunately, women are often placed on the bottom of the list. So members of our caucus are convinced that at least 30% of women should be in the upper part of the party list of candidates, and that political party not following this rule should be fined and excluded from the election process. The candidate quotas will only be successful if women are placed in winnable position on a party list, and if the quotas include sanction for non-compliance. So we introduced also this legislation in Ukrainian parliament, and now we are waiting for voting of that. We, women of Ukraine, thank you very much for your support. By supporting Ukraine against Russian aggression, you will help our prisoners like Nadia be freed. You will help bring home husbands and wives. You will support new IDPs from fleeing their homes. I'd like to add something about Crimea. Today, Russia is sure that the Crimea issue is clear forever, that the world will forget this annexation reached illegally. But I will remember here the word of 16th President of the United States, the first Republican President Abraham Lincoln, who was confident that nothing is settled definitely as long as not resolved fairly. In this regard, we welcome introduction of the draft bill, Crimea Annexation Non-Recognition Act. And at all our meeting with senators, we try to ask them to vote for this act. We are really grateful to all American people for supporting us for military assistance, what we need especially. We are grateful to the US for strengthening sanctions against Russia. Please continue to be supportive. It's really, really important for us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. By the way, I've noticed the clock, and you know, I did not, as moderator, want to intervene on their presentations because they were very substantive. So we're going to spill over a little bit here. We do have our fourth member of parliament, but I want to ask you at the end of her pithy presentation, that to think of a few questions we want to take because they have to have interaction with you. We cannot go out that door unless there's interaction. But let me introduce Olena Kondratyuk. She is the Secretary, Committee on Freedom of Speech and Information Policy. She's been a strong, strong advocate for freedom of speech issues, and she's the author of a number of legislative initiatives to protect freedom of speech and combat censorship. I wanted to pick out also the fact that she is one of the authors of the draft law on political party gender quotas, which you were just hearing about. And also, notably, on February 12 of this year, the Verkhovna Rada adopted a draft law that was proposed by Olena and others to hold accountable those responsible for domestic violence. And by the way, in the Maidan, these were issues that she took on board, especially, and trying to protect those that were being beaten, which you got heavily involved in. She's going to say some words about the case of Savchenko and also about combating disinformation.
Thank you very much. Sorry, but I speak Ukrainian. Дуже дякую моїм колегам, які сьогодні зібралися тут разом зі мною. Ви знаєте, ми пройшли дійсно дуже великий шлях. Шлях непростий, і якщо дозволите, я перш за все зупинюся і пару слів розкажу про нашу ще одну колегу, яка, на жаль, зараз не може працювати в парламенті України, оскільки вона ув'язнена і перебуває в полоні у російського агресора. Це, звичайно, Надія Савченко. Я думаю, що не треба представляти, яка це героїня. Вона, в принципі, є символом таким зараз для будь-якого українця, чи той, хто воює, чи той, хто перебуває в тилу, чи той, хто навчається, а також і для багатьох інших громадян або тих людей, які співчувають Україні. Вона є символом незламності, нескореності, символом для наслідування, тому що такої жінки-воїна, напевно, символічно потрапила в полон, тому що вона все ж таки, перш за все, вона військова і виконувала свій обов'язок по захисту своєї держави, зараз знаходиться в дуже складному становищі. Коротко, якщо можна говорити, то
Пару днів тому їй було пред'явлено офіційне звинувачення про те, що вона незаконно ніби перетнула кордон. Адвокати, знову ж таки, спростовують це. Але тим не менше ми розуміємо, що без міжнародного далі підтримки, міжнародного розголосу ця справа просто не має ніяких шансів на успіх. Ми, звичайно, дуже вдячні за турботу з американської сторони. Мама Надія Савченко мала змогу бути присутня при ООН, вона зустрічалася з Самантою Пауер. І ми, наскільки можемо, в Україні теж робимо все можливе для того, щоб ця тема ніколи не замовчувалася. На минулому тижні ми прийняли 2 великі постанови в парламенті. Одна говорить про те, що ми звертаємося до Путіна, щоб він виконав свій обов'язок і відпустив Надію Савченко, оскільки вона має імунітет як народного депутата України, так само імунітет члена парламентської асамблеї Ради Європи. Не кажучи вже на те, що всі звинувачення, які висунуті проти неї, є просто необґрунтовані. Постанова одна говорить про те, щоб негайно випустити Надію Савченко з полону. І друга постанова – це так званий список Савченко, куди війшли 35 осіб, які так чи інакше причетні до полону Савченко, до фабрикації її справи, до сфабрикованих звинувачень. Ці 35 осіб, починаючи від Володимира Путіна, закінчуючи прокурорами, суддями, людьми, які сфальсифікували цю справу. Звичайно, що цей список, ми дуже сподіваємося, що він буде дуже подібний до списку Магнітського, який вже існує зараз. Ми мали нагоду передати список Савченко в Державний Держдеп Сполучених Штатів. Ми сьогодні його передавали також багатьом сенаторам, щоб привернути увагу до проблем міжнародного права, до проблем, з якими ми стикаємося так чи інакше в Україні. Ми дуже сподіваємося, що, можливо, оця остання постанова про список Савченко дасть можливість застосувати все ж таки особисті санкції для того, щоб якомога більше тиснути на агресора. Звичайно, ми зацікавлені в тому, щоб якомога більше цієї інформації дізналося і в Сполучених Штатах, тому що ми бачимо Сполученими Штатами партнерами в цьому питанні. Особливо було приємно, коли ми відкривали виставку в Конгресі, що першим відвідувачем був сенатор Маккейн, який багато запитував про Надію, і тут якийсь символізм є в подібності ситуації, в якій колись опинився був і Маккейн. Ми сподіваємося, що для Надії Савченко подальша доля буде дуже сприятливою, і разом з міжнародними юристами, з міжнародними інституціями ми доб'ємося все-таки її звільнення. Ви знаєте, дуже символічно, що оця вся пропагандистська машина, яка говорить зараз навіть неправду в даний час про Надію, з уст російських телеканалів, російських медіа, вона дуже сильно відображалася і на нашій ситуації в Україні. Насправді Україна, крім того, що перебуває в реальній збройній зараз боротьбі з агресором, вона також перебуває в гібридній війні інформаційній. Дуже багато часу російські телеканали мали вплив на український медіапростір. Насправді в медіапросторі України десь 50-60% займав інформаційний продукт Росії у вигляді російських серіалів, новин, медіаканалів навіть. Тобто всі російські канали, я думаю, що їх є багато і в Європі, тому що ми знаємо про Russia Today і так далі, і цю пропаганду, яка далі існує в Європі. Ми зі своєї сторони в парламенті, в Комітеті зі свободи слова, український уряд зробили все можливе по запобіганню протидії такої пропаганди. Наприклад, були заборонені практично всі російські канали на території України, які вели пропаганду і відверту брехню зі своїх ефірів. Ми прийняли закон про суспільне телебачення. довготривалий процес, який був, і нам ніяк не вдавалося цього зробити. Зараз цей процес пішов вперед. Мало того, нас навіть створено Міністерство інформації. Це перший досвід для нас, тому що насправді ми розуміємо, що головною метою є донесення суспільно важливої інформації для українців. Це такий міст між громадськими організаціями, медіа спільнотою і державними інституціями, щоб доносити правду до України. Далі ми прийняли ще один закон, так для відома, про заборону російських серіалів, але натомість нам треба заповнити чимось український медіапродукт. З цим є дуже великі проблеми. Я бачу знайомі обличчя просто людей, які працюють в інформаційному якраз середовищі. Раді вітати вас тут теж. І ви насправді розумієте, наскільки важливою є роль якраз власного інформаційного аудіовізуального продукту. Він потребує дуже великих інвестицій. Ці великі інвестиції, знову ж таки, пов'язані з медіареформою. Тому що інвестування в медіа українське, незалежне, теж потребує дуже великої уваги. Тому що незалежні медіа, прозорі медіа, а нам потрібна якраз реформа медійна. Сподіваємося, якраз приверне і буде спроможною зробити український медіапростір дуже і дуже патріотичним, якісним і європейського рівня. Ви знаєте, коли ми їздимо на Схід з нашими партнерами, ми дуже багато зустрічаємося з молоддю, особливо в університетах, в школах. І ви знаєте, для вас буде, напевно, здивування, що для цих регіонів, які потерпають найбільше від російської агресії, інформаційна безпека є дуже важливою. І інформаційне інформування є дуже важливою. Насправді, ви будете подивовані, але американців там сприймають як людей якихось потойбічного світу. Тобто ми вас запрошуємо просто приїхати, хоча б подивитися, щоб вони побачили, що вони такі самі, як і вони, люди. Справді, більшість з них ніколи не їздили за кордон і сприймають всю інформацію, яку вони бачать по телебаченню. Дякую вам. Якщо будуть якісь питання окремо до мене стосовно нашого захисту як інформаційного простору, я була би дуже вдячна вам за них. Дякую.
I'm going to stand up this time. Are there questions from the floor? I thought we'd take two. Surely there has to be. This is a very well-informed group, okay? And introduce yourself. Here's a mic. As a board member of IRI.
Yes. Thank you very much. Sometimes in Washington we have short attention spans, so it's good for you to be here and to remind us of the importance of Ukraine, not just to Ukraine, but to all of Europe and globally as well. So thank you. My question is the following. What do you believe Putin's territorial objectives are in Ukraine? Does he want to separate the two eastern provinces, Donetsk and Luhansk? Does he want to build a land bridge from Luhansk down to Crimea, where will he stop in territorial terms?
Maria is jumping. She wants to answer that immediately. Please.
The main goal of Putin not to have Ukraine on the map of the world, because he's destroying the bridges, the schools, the hospitals, I mean, all infrastructure. And that is why for him, Ukraine, he will never forgive us Orange Revolution, revolution of dignity. We are much powerful than him. And that makes him crazy, that somebody is much powerful than him. I mean the spirit, I mean the sense of freedom, I mean the sense of democracy, and that's such values which he doesn't know. And if the whole world, is trying to press him, he would historically, Ukraine is 700 years older than Russia, but he can't accept it. He thinks that this Russian world has to be everywhere. And that is why when we are saying that we have to stop him on our border, it means that if we will not stop him, the question who is next is absolutely in the air.
Isn't he also concerned about Ukraine being stronger economically? Is that a factor as well, being strong ultimately economically?
He will destroy us absolutely now economically. That is why he will hit the whole social boons. Also, that is why we are having all these terrorist acts. That is why we have still, unfortunately, agents in the informational sector also. I will tell you, we have how many? We have from 15 magazines and newspapers, 80% it's in Russian. It's not even in Ukrainian language, but they are pro-Ukrainian. We still have some pro-Russian media. So through this, he's also, manipulating things. And about the economy, Olena will add me probably.
Just one issue. Putin never says what he wants, so we do not know. But obviously, for us, it's important to say that Donetsk and Lugansk is Ukraine, and we do care about people who stay there, even despite the fact that these people are angry with the rest of us for the fact that we really cut off their pensions and social assistance, because we as parliamentaries took a huge burden when we voted for the decree of for the resolution of the Supreme Council of Ukraine for calling these territories occupied ones. Because for us it was critical to say that these territories are occupied by the aggressor, so we cannot really provide assistance legally, formally, as Ukrainian government and as Ukrainian parliament to these people. So we carry this responsibility for doing that. So for us, that's why we're asking all the international community to support with humanitarian aid our Ukrainians on the territories of Donetsk and Lugansk oblasts that are occupied currently by the Russian aggressor.
By the way, you certainly have brought that story here today.
Yeah.
Wait, go, because you haven't had a chance to respond. Please.
I will tell in Ukrainian.
Okay.
Please translate. Путін сьогодні має власні проблеми. І найголовніша для нього проблема сьогодні – це перемога демократії в Україні. На цьому тлі, якщо Україна стане успішною, він втратить владу у Росії. І сьогодні найважливіше для нього завдання – не дати можливості Україні розвиватися успішно. Як далеко піде Путін? Настільки, наскільки ми йому дамо. І тому ми просимо міжнародну спільноту про зброю. Про зброю не для нападу, про зброю для захисту. Тому що коли він своєю силою, найбільшою у Європі армією, лякає Європу, повинна бути противага, оборонна сила, яка не буде давати можливості цьому дисбалансу, який сьогодні створився. Тому Україна сьогодні – це кордон, де обороняється демократія, де обороняються людські основні цінності, а не тільки кордони нашої конкретної країни. Тому ми тут, тому ми спілкуємося з міжнародною спільнотою і особливо з Сполученими Штатами Америки. Країною, яка здатна обороняти такі демократичні цінності, і довела це вже всьому світові.
I think that you have all very, very effectively conveyed that very message. I'm going to make this suggestion because I think there are those we had promised only to one. We're now 1:20. I'm going to say we close for those who would like to come up and to meet and ask specific questions of each. But Maria wants to have one last. Okay, we let you close.
Yeah,
all right?
sorry.
As long as your colleagues let you say the
Sorry,
last word.
I would like to say that as we have a lot of conversation with the local people in Lugansk and Donetsk Oblast, they're not pro-Russian, they're pro-Soviet. So they have this nostalgia about Soviet Union. That is why, because they do not know Ukrainian side. And that is why Olena, when we're speaking about the students, we are asking to talk and to cooperate with the students exactly from that regions, Lugansk and Donetsk, because they didn't have that information. That is why only on that region, because in other region, believe us, the students were they were the engine on the revolution of dignities. They are very pro-European. Thank you very much.
You could see why I was very excited, how extraordinary they are. And please, I hope, because they have a moment, please come up and greet them. Yes.
То нормально все? Ні, ну ми, знаєш, скільки сидимо? Годину 20. Ми вже годину 20.
Якщо до вас підійдуть, то можемо вам допомогти з перекладом, якщо підійдуть до вас, якщо захочете.